Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to this community showdown. It's going to be Bretonnia led by the menacing Platypus, facing off against the Dwarves, who are going to be helmed by Liddens. Let's get this party started and have some fun, see what these armies are made of. Now, for the forces of Bretonnia, we're going to be seeing the new, well, I guess they're certainly changed, but I would say the improvements on the Grail relics are pretty darn nice, because now they actually give you melee attacks. If you take a look at the buff here, yes, the Icon of Devotion, you're going to be giving melee attack to your Footsquire units, which will certainly really enjoy that against Dwarves. So Footsquire's armor piercing bonus for his infantry, buffed up by the Grail relics, pretty cool stuff. Now, I think it's mainly just Footsquires with a couple peasant mobs and Grail Knights. So Grail Knights, you wouldn't think they would be good against Dwarves, right? Because they're an anti-large unit, but they still have an insane charge bonus. They got armor piercing buffs in the most recent patch. So yeah, that they just become like heavy shot cap against Dwarves. So maybe even, I mean, are they preferable to Questing Knights? Questing Knights are like, you know, used to be the go-to, right? With Knights Errant kind of in tandem with that. But yeah, Grail Knights with their insane charge bonus, they're good armor piercing now. I mean, look at that, 30 armor piercing damage. That is serious. They could probably just straight up be better. I mean, again, they're much more expensive than the Questing Knight, so it's more of like kind of an elite focus type build. On an open field map like an Oakenshield, you probably wouldn't want to bring them against Dwarves because maybe there's like a cannon or two just ripping them apart. But on this map, yeah, why not? So Fey Enchantress, double Paladin, and yeah, looks like that's it. Yep, no more other heroes, characters, other funny business. And now looking at the Dowie, it's going to be Thoric Ironbrow, Dwarf Warriors in the front, couple Slayers, and the double Master Engineer is a really nice tech against Bretonnia. Not only do they have armor-piercing long rifles to basically snipe cavalry models, but they have a slow. So when the Bretonnians charge in, if you have good enough micro, you can drop the flash bomb on them. And yeah, slows them down, lowers their charge bonus, lowers their stats, allows your Dwarves to really fight back pretty effectively. So one cannon here, but cannon's not going to have a great time on this map. This is definitely not an artillery map, although having one just to keep your opponent honest, I suppose, isn't really a terrible idea, right? In the trees, we got Dwarf Warriors and Slayers, and now we can do a little bit of fast forwarding, as this is going to be a cagey one, I can tell. Dwarves going to be parking back on objective number 2. The Bretonnians, obviously with the mobile advantage, going to be creeping up through the trees here and sending peasant mobs. Because the thing is, the Dwarves typically, guys, have to fight in a very like focal style, like very kind of unified style, just like slow pushing these two objectives. Whereas if they try and send loose units over here, the vastly more mobile faction in Bretonnia is just going to be cackling and making them pay the troll toll. So really, you just want a Death Star to move up and take your opponent's home objective. And then if Bretonnia at some point like over commits, maybe you can slip like a Dwarven Miner out of Vanguard here and just move in and, you know, get some blasting charges on the peasants holding the point and do your thing. So here we see the Dwarves. They're going to be creeping up and not letting the Bretonnians capture their home objective, which is very smart. Bretonnia calls in a Knights Errant. Knights Errant don't have the best armor piercing, but even still, they can do okay. And we do have some mounted yeomen here in the trees. Obviously, they want to get the snipe on the cannon, but we'll see how aware the Dwarven player is. As more cannon fire does go down into the old peasant mobs, they're sitting at 12 leadership, and yeah, the fighting does rage on. Dwarven reinforcements, going to be double Rangers. Rangers against Bretonnian Footsquires aren't bad. For Bretonnia, what type of reinforcements are we seeing? We're seeing Men-at-Arms, Knights Errant, a couple different units, but really, it's just kind of a bit of a standoff. Dwarves going to be holding on to the 2 points, and again, we'll do fast forwarding. I think Platypus is trying to build up a bit of a critical mass. Oh, but it looks like the Dwarves going over here. That seems like a bit of a mistake. Grail Knight's not doing that much damage into the miners with blasting charges. Honestly, that's, I mean, it still does a little bit, but yeah, that really wasn't too bad. Are they going to be charging into the Slayers and just trying to get some big shock damage against them? Even still, maybe the charge order was issued a little bit late. We'll have to kind of keep tabs on that. So Dwarves, yeah, this like side play I think is a bit of a mistake because it's just kind of letting the Bretonnian cavalry feast, although it looks like the Grail Knights are taking some damage from the blasting charge units here. And again, those guys do have pickaxes with good armor piercing. There are some Slayers coming in, so the Dwarves are going to be pressuring for a triple cap, which is certainly going to be forcing the hand of the Platypus here, as we do have 2 Dwarf Warriors holding up on the point. And the peasant mobs, as well as the men-at-arms getting ready to party. Mounted yeomen going to be for sure trying to slip down the side and get in there and cause some havoc. Long rifles from the Master Engineers. I think they ripped a shot at the Fey Enchantress. But now Bretonnia is going to be sounding the clarion call and moving out and getting ready to fight. Paladins, oh, they were actually on the flying mounts. Actually, I like that. It gives you a little bit of a, you know, an option to push into a Dowie backfield. Thoric Ironbrow is going to be sitting. As far as the runes he has of Wrath and Ruin and Negation, and also Rune of Doom, which is the one that his Anvil comes from. A little bit of Archer Fire will probably break these peasant mobs. Their base leadership, if unsupported, is worse than it was before. Fey Enchantress dropping her Mortis Engine here. Not going to do a whole lot of damage, but even still, it is going to start. And it looks like Bretonnia is able to potentially start getting this objective back. We'll have to see those Dwarf Warriors holding on. Cannon fire from downtown, going after the Knights Errant, and the Slayers are able to rush and intercept. Really good flash bomb there by our Dwarf player. It does lock down the Mounted Yeomen, and those Slayers are probably going to be able to intercept them and get some good value. Over here on the far side, peasant mobs getting melted. We do have some foot squires coming in, so the dwarf player most likely will set both rangers to start shooting at the foot squires here, whereas the platypus has now emerged from its den, and we do see the great weapons cleaving through the dwarf warriors here. So foot squires are pretty cost-effective against baseline dwarven troops. Their armor will help mitigate some of the low DPS that dwarven infantry do typically do. And now the Grail Knights coming in. Oh, that's so epic. Look at the Grail Knights, just the thunderous charge plowing through that dwarven position. See, that's what I'm talking about. That was like some really, really good damage. My goodness. And the dwarves, they have something trapped here. It looks like the two paladins are going for a gooning attempt on the master engineer, which I do like. There are some slayers nearby, which are starting to kind of rip away at them. And in the backfield, we see some pressure coming in, but for the most part, it looks like blasting charges were called in via the Norgelming's Ironbreakers, and those foot squires got just absolutely karate chopped. And now our dwarf player is going to be summoning in the Skyhammer. So the Skyhammer with its machine gun going after the Enchantress, and probably going to be trying to get some big bombardments on those Grail Knights. But this dwarf position here looking heavily, heavily unsupported. The foot squires, of course, would eventually probably, out-trade both of those. And now the Grail Knight charged in the back once again for the lady. I wish it was against something evil, though. Anytime it's like Bretonnia versus like a good guy faction, it doesn't quite hit as hard as it is like running through vampires or like, Skaven or something. But even still, it's fun to see. So the backfield is stabilized. Norgelming's Ironbreakers moving up, Rangers moving up as well. But Marmont's going to come in most likely from the Skyhammer. It looks like he thought about doing it on the Men-at-Arms there, but probably will drop it right now. And there it goes. That's some fat damage for sure. Granted, those are just cheap chaff units, so it's not like you're really hitting anything of serious quality. Now, look at that. Flesh to Stone for 60% ward save, and those Slayers are going to get charged pretty heavily and take some big damage. Well, they would have taken that kind of damage even pre-patch probably from Grail Knights, but yeah, they're going to take some L's in terms of their models if they stay in combat with the Slayers, especially since these are the dreaded Dragonback Slayers. We see the Grail Knights starting to get worn down, starting to take some heavy casualties. Value does favor the Dwarves pretty heavily, but Bretonnia, let's look at the captures. Here we see Bretonnia holding on this side. We do see a combination of men-at-arms and just peasant mobs holding back the tides of the dwarves, and some cavalry being called in as well. So Grail Knights on the other side, and Platypus really, really impressive cavalry micro, as more Grail Knights just really taking advantage of the dwarves' lack of mobility. And again, I can't help but think the dwarves are giving a ton of free value here by fighting on multiple fronts rather than just consolidating everything on one point, but even so, we'll see. Yeah, Bretonnia's going to win this. The Grail Knights will clean that up. Back here, we see the Dwarves owning the home objective of Bretonnia. Currently, the Dwarves are up in value as well as on objective, which is going to be pretty tough, but the Bretonnian cavalry will most likely clean up this entire side of the field here. We'll have to see how that all unfolds. So Dwarven bows still singing, shooting into the Grail Relique, so the Grail Relique is going to be going down, and here we see the Paladins hunting the Skyhammer, so the Skyhammer is able to kind of get away here, while these Slayers do chase down the Paladins and kind of keep them honest. The very, very close match is a great scrap. I know it looks one-sided, but there's still a lot of Bretonnian pressure on the battlefield via the Grail Knights, and the Dwarves do have some elements that are a little bit spread out. The Grail Knights here picking off these miners with blasting charges, and then again, we'll probably come around the back and scrap with those guys. I believe, yeah, triple cap for the Dowie right now, guys. They're closing in 7.61. The value keeps climbing as that Grail Relique does go down. Chalice of Potions is missed. Nice dodge there by that Dwarven player. As those Slayers do continue to hunt down the Enchantress, we get Flesh to Stone being used. Again, nope, Earthblood on the Grail Knights. Grail Knights here get a little bit of a push on the Master Engineer. Those Knights aren't, but Master Engineers are pretty resilient themselves. High armor. But again, with the recent buffs with the armor piercing on a lot of the Bretonnian units, it's not quite as devastating. And now we get the Bretonnian Goon Squad here. So the double Paladins find the Skyhammer, and that is a big comeback play. The Skyhammer getting chased and broken, although it looks like it's having trouble fleeing in the battlefield. Nope, it's able to flee there. That is a huge pick, and you'll notice the value is pulled back. And remember, Bretonnia has healing and the Dwarves don't. So it's honestly really, really close in terms of value right now, right? So cannon going down, Dwarves trying to hold on to the points. The Dwarves probably close to a position where they could win on just one objective, which would certainly be very good for them. Here we see the Dwarven infantry fighting back against the Bretonnian peasant hordes, but the unwashed hordes about to get a leadership buff from the incoming knights. So are these Grail Knights? Oh, I love seeing Grail Knights in action. It's so cool when elite units are actually good, right? So the Grail Knights charge in. Beautiful one. That Dwarven position getting hammered pretty damn hard. And once again, the Dwarf player probably going to be regretting sending units over there. So Platypus would for sure, in my opinion, need a triple cap. And so the Dwarves just going to be kind of focusing on holding this point, which should be something that they will be very, very good at. More cavalry charges coming down the hill from the Grail Knights as the miners continue to move out. Rangers don't really have a ton of armor piercing. I always think a Dwarf army should never leave home without like one or two Thunderers. So if somebody's really aggressive in your backfield, you can just pop out huge armor piercing and make a difference quickly. But yeah, these Rangers are going to be very, very weak against the Grail Knights. You don't have any armor to mitigate the non-armor piercing damage, so yeah, that is just pure brutality. And you can see the Rune of Doom, though, going to give the Dwarves a little bit of stopping power. Thoric Ironbrow up on the high ground pushes back the Foot Squires, And looks like he is locked in a bit of Mortal Kombat here with the Paladin. And he does smash one Paladin. So one of the Bretonnian Paladins does pay the Troll Toll. It's going to be running away. Fey Enchantress, I think, is still around the battlefield. I don't think the Fey Enchantress was blundered in any way. So looking. Did the Fey Enchantress get unsummoned or killed? So we could actually check the Bretonnian leadership right here and see. So the leadership's at 27. And nope. So it looks like the Lord is alive somewhere, maybe unsummoned, but we'll keep tabs. No, she's back there. All right, so we found the Fey Enchantress. Where's Waldo? It has been finished. Ranger line still fighting, blasting charges into the returning Foot Squires. Got to feel pretty good for the Dwarf player. Urgamling's Ironbreakers will be tough to kill for pretty much anything. And this is an interesting play here. I think a little bit risky. I think an overextension from our Dwarf champion. I think setting them on the back objective and just using them to accentuate and further your victory there is big. But now, Hippogriff Knights were good against Dwarves pre-patch, but with 4 more models, they're just going to be even more devastating. And the Dwarf player basically just threw away these 2 Master Engineers, which, I understand the idea. Bretonnia looks very weak on this back point. But when you're in a position where, you're a slow faction and you're weaker when separated and you can just win by sitting on 1 point with your high armor and durability, that's got to be the play, right? Because now Fey Enchantress and her, Hippogriff Knights just going to be ripping apart these Master Engineers and giving them the absolute dirty. Back on objective 2, the Dwarves holding, and over here we see a little bit of Dwarven aggression. Once again, Dwarf Warriors heading over to the point, and the Bretonnian Cavalry are just like, all right, we're down to party. Dwarf Warriors, of course, do have the charge defense against large foes if they brace, but it doesn't look like they're going to be braced, so those cavalry just going to get a massive penetrating charge in and just punt through those dwarves. So they take a lot of damage, and I guess not a massive amount, but even still, considering they're an armored unit, man, Grail Knights are certainly back in the menu. But Platypus is working very hard with this cavalry micro. A lot of players would definitely struggle, and I feel like that's like the thing. Like New Bretonnia feels very strong, but I feel like their win rate will never be like super high because of the skill required to play them at a super optimal level. Like they're just so micro intensive, like in terms of low leadership on a lot of your units. But yeah, Bretonnia definitely is like, I would say like in many ways, like in terms of micro capabilities, like the Zerg and StarCraft. I always felt like that was kind of an apt analogy for them. And here we see the big Hippogriff Knights is going to be brutal. That's going to be some disgusting damage. Oh my god, those Rangers get absolutely melted. A little bit of Ranger support coming in. The other Rangers going to be turning to attack them. And the Dwarves do call back a cannon, which I think actually isn't a bad idea. Look at that. The Hippogriff Knights actually take huge damage from that cannon. Favor of the Fey active Rune of Doom, trying to give those Rangers a bit of a fighting chance. More miners with blasting charges moving up. And Thoric Ironbrow, is he still around? Obviously, he just cast the Rune of Doom. And the Dwarves are getting a little bit of momentum here. So this is really going to be a tough one for Platypus. He's going to have to grab this. Oh, man. And this objective getting ninja'd would be just catastrophic for Platypus from Glidden here. He has these random Dwarf Warriors on the point and is starting to get it. I don't know if Platy has noticed that, but he could respond very quickly with the Yeoman or some sort of a cav unit, but we'll have to see how that unfolds. Now back to the epicenter of action. This is just MLG plays right here, and I'll explain why. So the Dwarves are saturating units in to hold their objective, but Platypus is running interference. So he's using the Royal Hippogriff Knights to stop the units from making their way to the objective, which is going to give the Bretonnians the capture weight they need to get that point. So the Dwarves definitely making a bit of a mistake, overextending once again. Like the 2 Master Engineers, oh my god, are they actually going to make a difference here? I don't think so. I think the Paladin comes in and probably kills them both, especially with a couple of Yeomen to kind of target them. But you see what I'm saying about the 2 Master Engineers? Like if they weren't blundered and they sat back on objective number 2, he would have 6 capture weight there, which would outdo these chaff units, and they would just be shooting at all the cav units. They could have helped fight against the Hippogriff Knights, but yeah, here we're going to see the Master Engineers probably losing this. Nice flash bomb of the Paladin, though, and the Paladin's anti-large isn't terribly helpful here, and they do also lack armor piercing against the Master Engineer, but that should be a pretty doable fight. We do see some miners with blasting charges making their way. Oh my god, oh my goodness. This Dwarf Warrior unit, is there something coming to stop him? This has happened to me so many times where I'm just like in the heat of the moment, micro and cav units with the Empire, whatever, right? And then like one haggard, tattered unit comes back. The chosen Dowie champions, look at them celebrating, raising their axes into the air. They certainly deserve it, as the Bretonnians are going to be scurrying back, but not before the objective is flipped, and that is going to be a huge boon for the Dwarves, which is basically going to keep them in the game. The Dwarves are trying to get back to the point here. This would have otherwise been like probably GG, but the fact that they ninja'd that point gives them like a slight fighting chance. But Bretonnia is definitely ahead on value, and the Dwarf formation needs like some stopping power to deal with these Hippogriff Knights, which I don't think it's going to have, as they're basically just bouncing around, massacring all the Dwarven infantry, sitting at 1,100 value. They cost over 2,000. They cost 2,100, if I'm not mistaken. Thoric on his way back in, but here's where the anti-large will be pertinent, because he's on the Anvil of Doom. So the anti-large paladins will be able to kind of shank him. So there he goes, running up the hill. 6 leadership, 14 leadership. Thoric going down probably would be the end of the Dowie. As we see a resurging Dowie force over here, a couple miners, as well as the Dwarf Warriors, going to be trying to make their way to the point. Grail Knights have made their way in. A Grail Elite going to come and provide capture weight as well as support for those units. And it looks like Bretonnia, I think, has got this one in the bag. I don't see the Dwarves coming back. They're just kind of using the dreaded Reaganomics where a lot of units are kind of trickling in around the map. Cavalry charges running these things down. We got Slayers moving up, but Slayers, could easily be Cycle Charge and Swarm. I mean, they're not invincible, right? They are invincible in terms of leadership, but in other regards, not so much. So the Dwarves, do they manage to get to the point? Whoa, could we see a resurgence? Oh my God, the Dwarves stabilize the point. It looks like they do. Oh my God, could this be the dreaded Dwarven comeback with the late game Skyhammer, which I did not expect? A lot of you guys probably tuned out and thought the game was over, but man, oh man, this could be a reverse sweep. So the Dwarves get up on the point. They get the capture weight. Bretonnia is going to have to get some cavalry over here. We do get the Paladin coming in. Skyhammer is just such a good unit. It's definitely one of the better RORs in the game. It's like, I had a Skyhammer against me the other day get almost 5,000 value against my Warriors of Chaos. I was like, Jesus, that thing is just absolutely nuts. So the Dwarves just need to hold this for a little bit of time. We got the Master Engineer coming in. Will the Skyhammer get the big bombardments? And here it comes. 1, 2, 3, and boom. Nice bombardment on the Yeoman. Although not as much damage as you would expect. Foot Squires get nuked, and he's just kind of juking, and the tattered Dwarven units basically just need to endure the wrath of the Grail Knights. And Dwarves are also pressuring their back objective again. They're just so persistent. Oh my God, it's so lore-friendly. So the Slayers have gotten up to the point. This objective looks like it could flip, but the Royal Hippogriff Knights are on their way in. This became a super close, scrappy game. So Dwarves got this one, but they need to hold it for a while longer, and the Bretonians just absolutely steamrolled them here. The Bretonnian cavalry coming in. These are all, Dwarven chaff units, right? So they're not going to be able to do too much. We do have any more Dwarves. Nope. Looks like the Skyhammer just running interference. And the Dwarves need a little bit less than a minute of holding time. This objective is currently flipping to the Dwarves as some Rangers are making their way up. A blasting charge is coming. Obviously, Hippogriff Knights taking some heavy damage fighting the Slayers. Slayers will do great anti-large attacks. And the blasting charges were able to knock down some of the peasants, but we do see Rangers being sent out of a bit of desperation here. And the objective does start to flip back. Enchantress on her way in. Enchantress is going to be able to Mortis Engine and will provide some capture weight of her own. Rangers, just desperation cap. Basically, they can come out of Vanguard so they can get there quickly. And will the Dwarves be able to flip this one? Find out on today's episode. A couple Dwarven infantry still around. Skyhammer's on its way back, which is good. It's going to try and do this. Platypus certainly wants to shut that down and keep the Dwarves from getting this point back. And it looks like the Dwarven Resilience may kick in, and they might get the objective. Oh, it's so close. Cavalry and Enchantress still don't have enough cap weight to stop them. And the Royal Hippogriff Knights with the favor of the Fae have eclipsed 2,000 value. As this objective, will it flip? Oh my God, it does flip to the Dwarves. So he just needs to hold this for a little bit longer, and Platypus needs to push him off, man. The Mortis Engine, though, is going to be very strong, and like what you see, Dwarf Warriors coming in and Rangers. I don't know why those Rangers didn't come out of the Vanguard. He definitely a misclick there. Those Rangers could have came out of the Vanguard and provided a little bit of work, but Foot Squires and Platypus probably will flip the objective quick enough. I think he's going to be able to get it back. The Dwarves basically have nothing on this. Oh my God, he's 15 seconds. Oh my God, 13, 12, 9. Oh my God, this is so close. Objective number 3, owned by the Bretonians. I think Platypus gets it, just barely. Oh my God, look at the cap weight. The cap weight's just launching. It's got so many units. The Dwarves have like nothing here. Oh my God, and the Dwarves win it. Jeez. I can't believe he won that. I can't believe he won that. That was nuts. Oh my God, what a crazy game. Subverted expectations all day. So big shout out to Platypus for sending that in. Big shout out. A lot of people don't send in their losses, especially, you don't see it from these top tier players like him, but mad shout out to Platypus. That's good stuff. And that was an incredible cab micro. It was cool seeing Grail Knights. I can't help but think, would Quest Knights just be more cost effective for the cheaper price point? I don't know. The Grail Knights seemed great. They were awesome, and they look super cool doing it. Yeah, killing the Skyhammer initially was quite big, but the Dwarven Resilience, man, that tenacity, that fighting spirit, that was a very, very impressive win. So GG, well played. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. Well played to both these guys. That was insane. We'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves and let me know what you guys want to see. Cheers.